Yes, he loves trains. So 1803, the French owned this New Orleans. So the president at the time, Thomas Jefferson, was like, that's no good because they can then block all trade. So he sends two guys, a future president, James Monroe, was one of them, to go to France and negotiate buying New Orleans for $10 million. Well, they go to France, and Napoleon says, you know what, I'm in the middle of a war, I need money, why don't you buy all of this for $15 million? So the president says, go buy New Orleans, and what happens is...
So this is still France, yeah?
Yeah, and so this, from France, so all of a sudden, these guys come back and say, hey, President Boss, guess what, we bought you? All of this land instead. So America doubled in size overnight. And when they doubled in size, he got a few guys to go look and explore and see what was in it. Guys named Lewis and Clark. But there wasn't a real trail that went from the Mississippi to the West Coast or towards out west until something called the Santa Fe Trail. So the Santa Fe Trail happened just outside of St. Louis. This guy that had no money. He was in debt. The judge said, I'll let you out. If you can pay this off in a couple months, you're free. So he's like, I'm going to go load up my wagon with $300 worth of goods, and I'm going to go to New Mexico and do some trading. So he goes down, and the people in New Mexico, they're like, this is good stuff. He comes back, $300 turns into $6,000, and they said, come on back with some more stuff. So he marked that trail, the Santa Fe Trail.
So this is just a bush?
What's that?
So any France didn't touch this?
So, well, yeah, they owned it, but there was not much there. There was not much there at all. So
where were they living in this section?
Well, so right now, well, New Mexico was an exception. New Mexico, there were, it was ruled by Spain at first, and then the Mexican Revolution happened in 1820, and the Mexicans won it. The reason that was important is back when this guy who was broke went down to New Mexico, Spain said you can't trade with outsiders. Well, the Mexican Revolution happened, and Mexicans took over, and they're like, oh yeah, we need stuff, we'll trade. But most of this area, uninhabited. That's where Lewis and Clark went and explored, and there were Indians that lived there, but not big colonies, so to speak. So this was where a lot of settlements had happened, but not far west here. So when we had the Santa Fe Trail, now you had a path out west, but it wasn't a great path. It was 8 weeks to get from one end to another, heat, exhaustion, all kinds of stuff. And then what happened was trains started. There's lots of trains in this part of the country. Hey, come on over. There are lots of trains here, but what happened? Are you from St. Louis?
Kansas City.
Kansas City, okay. So the story of St. Louis changed because back then we were the fourth largest city in America. All the stuff that was from the east came to St. Louis to be dispersed out west. But as trains were being built, St. Louis, we sit on the Mississippi River. And what that means is the way we move things up and down the river was steamboats. Steamboats was the big business. So if you are a business owner and you own these steamboats and you hear about trains coming, you think, oh, that's not good for business. Don't build that railroad over the Mississippi River. And that's what St. Louis did. They said, no, don't build trains here. Chicago said, no, make me the railroad hub. So St. Louis went from the fourth largest city to really staying kind of flat. I mean, it grew from 7,000 to 78,000 people in like 15 years in the 1830s, 1840s. Chicago, from that point on, they just took off. So decisions that we made, but what happened after that point was there was the reason that St. Louis got this bridge and got trains in place was there was an accident in Iowa where a train ran into a bridge, and all the steamboat owners said, go sue them because that will be proof that you shouldn't be building bridges. Well, there's a trial lawyer, a lawyer that represented the railroads by the name of Abraham Lincoln at the time. And he was the reason that that case, it wasn't technically won, it was, I don't know if it was dismissed or what have you, but it allowed bridges to be built. And so Abraham Lincoln, he was a longshoreman on boats, he was a trial lawyer, just pretty amazing person, but he's the reason why St. Louis ultimately got to a railroad system. But it was too late. Chicago already took off. But we talked about all those steamboats on the Mississippi River. So in 1849, there was a great fire in St. Louis. And so you think of fire catching on in one steamboat. What's going to happen? It jumps to the next one and the next one. You had 30 some odd steamboats on fire, and the fire jumps to land. 420 buildings catch on fire. 12 city blocks completely gone. It's the reason why we have building codes in St. Louis. Because back then, it was just kindling. It was just waiting for a huge fire. 1904, we had the World's Fair in St. Louis. So, I don't know if you've heard of it. I'm sure you've heard of the St. Louis World's Fair. Now, the World's Fair is two very different stories. So, on the one hand, if you were wealthy and if you were white, it was awesome. I mean, 10 million people came into